The autumn morning air was crisp and filled with the scent of pine needles and wood smoke as Tom Brennan drove his pickup truck down the winding mountain road toward the small town of Cedar Falls. At 38 years old, Tom had been working as a lumberjack in the Oregon forests for nearly 15 years, and his weekly trips to town for supplies had become a routine part of his solitary life. Tom lived alone in a modest cabin he had built himself, deep in the woods where the only sounds were the wind through the trees and the occasional call of wildlife. After his fiancée had left him 5 years ago, claiming she couldn't handle his isolated lifestyle, Tom had embraced the solitude completely. He found peace in the rhythm of his work, the honesty of physical labor, and the simplicity of a life without complications. Cedar Falls was a small mountain community of fewer than 1,000 residents, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Tom wasn't particularly social, but he was respected by the locals as a hard worker and an honest man. His interactions in town were usually limited to purchasing supplies, grabbing a meal at the local diner, and occasionally having a beer at Murphy's Tavern. On this particular Saturday morning, Tom had a longer list than usual. Winter was approaching, and he needed to stock up on non-perishables, fuel, and equipment maintenance supplies. As he parked his truck on Main Street, he noticed an unusual amount of activity around the town square. Colorful banners and makeshift stalls suggested some kind of market or festival was taking place. Tom wasn't particularly interested in community events, but his curiosity was piqued when he saw the sign: Cedar Falls Harvest Market, handmade goods, local produce, and more. He decided to take a quick look before heading to the hardware store and grocery market. The harvest market was bustling with activity. Local farmers were selling the last of their seasonal produce. Craftspeople were displaying handmade quilts and woodwork, and families were enjoying the festive atmosphere. Tom walked slowly through the stalls, occasionally stopping to examine a piece of woodwork or chat briefly with someone he recognized. It was near the far end of the market, in a section that seemed less organized and more chaotic, that Tom noticed something that made him stop in his tracks. In a shabby tent that looked like it had been hastily erected, a rough-looking man in his 50s was sitting behind a table covered with various items that appeared to be for sale. But what caught Tom's attention wasn't the man or his merchandise, was the small child sitting on a wooden crate beside the table. The little girl appeared to be around 4 or 5 years old, with tangled brown hair and clothes that were too big for her small frame. She was sitting perfectly still, staring at the ground with an expression of resignation that no child should ever have. What shocked Tom most was the handwritten cardboard sign propped up next to her that read, "Good worker, $200. Tom felt his stomach lurch as the implications of what he was seeing hit him. This man was trying to sell a child like she was a piece of merchandise. Tom approached the stall slowly, trying to process what he was witnessing. The man behind the table looked up at him with calculating eyes. "Afternoon," the man said in a gravelly voice. "See anything that interests you?" "What's this about?" Tom asked, nodding toward the little girl in the sign. "Oh, that's just little Lucy. She's a good worker, real quiet, doesn't eat much. Perfect for someone who needs help around the house or farm. $200, and she's yours." Tom felt a surge of anger and disgust, but he forced himself to remain calm. "You're selling a child. Now, don't get all high and mighty," the man said defensively. "I'm her uncle, and I got legal guardianship when her parents died, but I can't afford to keep feeding another mouth, and she's old enough to earn her keep. Better she goes to someone who can use her than stays with me, where she's just a burden." Tom looked down at the little girl Lucy and saw that she was listening to every word but showing no emotion. It was as if she had learned to shut down completely to protect herself from the horror of her situation. "Has anyone else shown interest?" Tom asked, his mind racing. "Had a few folks ask questions, but nobody's put down money yet. You interested or just wasting my time?" Tom's hands clenched into fists, but he kept his voice steady. "I might be interested. Can I talk to her?" "Sure, but don't expect much conversation. She don't talk much." Tom knelt down in front of Lucy, bringing himself to her eye level. She looked up at him with large, dark eyes that held a depth of sadness that broke his heart. "Hi there," Tom said softly. "I'm Tom. What's your name?" "Lucy," she whispered, so quietly he could barely hear her. "That's a pretty name. How old are you, Lucy?" She held up 4 fingers. 4 years old? That's a good age." Tom paused, trying to think of what to say to a child who was being sold like property. "Are you hungry?" Lucy nodded slightly. Tom stood up and turned back to the man. "When did she last eat?" "Yesterday, sometime." "Look, mister, are you buying or not? I got other business to attend to." Tom felt his anger boiling over, but he knew that losing his temper wouldn't help Lucy. He needed to get her away from this man, and if that meant playing along with this sick transaction, then that's what he would do. "I'll take her," Tom said firmly. "Smart choice. She's a good investment. $200 cash." Tom pulled out his wallet and counted out the money, each bill feeling like a weight in his hand. He was literally buying a human being, and the fact that it was legal because this monster had guardianship made it even more sickening. "There's paperwork," the man said, pulling out a crumpled document. Transfer of guardianship. You sign here, and she's your responsibility. Tom read through the document quickly. It was surprisingly fishy-looking, transferring legal guardianship of Lucy Marie Henderson from her uncle, Dale Henderson, to Thomas Brennan. Tom signed his name, feeling like he was signing away his old life and stepping into something completely unknown. Pleasure doing business with you, Dale said, pocketing the money. She's all yours now. Good luck with her. Dale packed up his remaining items and left without another word, abandoning Lucy as casually as someone might abandon an unwanted pet. Tom looked down at Lucy, who was still sitting on the wooden crate, apparently unsurprised by the transaction that had just taken place. She looked up at him with those same sad eyes, waiting to see what her new owner would do with her. Well, Lucy, Tom said gently, I guess you're coming home with me. Lucy stood up slowly, revealing that she was even smaller than Tom had realized. She was wearing a dress that was several sizes too large and shoes that had holes in them. She had no belongings, no toys, nothing that belonged to her except the clothes on her back. Are you ready to go? Tom asked. Lucy nodded and took a tentative step toward him. Tom held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. Her small hand was cold and rough, the hand of a child who had been forced to work. As they walked through the market toward Tom's truck, Tom was acutely aware of the stares and whispers from other people. Some looked curious, others seemed disapproving, and a few appeared to understand what had just happened and looked horrified. Tom helped Lucy into the passenger seat of his truck and buckled her seatbelt. She sat perfectly still, staring straight ahead, as if she was afraid to move or speak without permission. Lucy, Tom said, as he started the engine, I want you to know something. You're not my property. You're not a worker I bought. You're a little girl who deserves to be safe and cared for. Do you understand? Lucy looked at him with confusion, as if the concept of being cared for was foreign to her. I'm going to take you to my home, Tom continued. It's in the woods, and it's quiet and peaceful. You'll have your own room, and you'll have food whenever you're hungry, and you won't have to work. You can just be a kid. Does that sound okay? Lucy nodded slightly, but Tom could see that she didn't really believe him. She had probably been promised things before that hadn't materialized. As they drove through the forest toward Tom's cabin, Tom's mind was reeling with the magnitude of what he had just done. He had no experience with children, no idea how to care for a traumatized 4-year-old, and no plan for what would happen next. But as he glanced over at Lucy, sitting so small and still in the passenger seat, he knew he had done the right thing. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they had to be better than leaving her with a man who would sell her to the highest bidder. Lucy, Tom said as they turned onto the dirt road that led to his cabin. From now on, you're not just Lucy. You're Lucy Brennan. You're part of my family now, and that means you're safe. I promise you that. Lucy looked at him with those dark eyes, and for the first time since he had seen her, Tom thought he detected a tiny spark of hope as they pulled up to Tom's cabin. Nestled among the tall pines with smoke rising from the chimney, Tom realized that his quiet, solitary life was over. He was now responsible for a little girl who had been treated as property, and he had no idea what he was doing, but he also knew that Lucy needed him, and maybe, just maybe, he needed her too. The first week with Lucy was unlike anything Tom had ever experienced. His cabin, which had always been a sanctuary of quiet solitude, was now filled with the presence of a small, silent child who seemed to expect nothing and trust no one. Tom had immediately given Lucy the cabin's small second bedroom, which he had previously used for storage. He spent the first day clearing out boxes and equipment, setting up a bed he had hastily purchased in town, and trying to make the space suitable for a 4-year-old. Lucy watched his efforts without comment, sitting on the living room couch with her hands folded in her lap, as still as a statue. What do you think? Tom asked when he had finished arranging the room. Is this okay for you? Lucy nodded politely, but Tom could see that she was simply agreeing because she thought that was what he wanted to hear. She had clearly been trained to be compliant. Nundemanding. The most challenging aspect of caring for Lucy was her complete lack of normal childhood behavior. She didn't play, didn't laugh, didn't ask for anything, and rarely spoke unless directly questioned. She ate whatever food Tom put in front of her without complaint, even when it was clear she didn't like it. She went to bed when told and woke up early, sitting quietly in her room until Tom came to get her. Most disturbing of all, Lucy seemed to expect to be put to work. On her second morning in the cabin, Tom found her trying to sweep the kitchen floor with a broom that was twice her height. Lucy, what are you doing? Tom asked gently. Working, she replied matter-of-factly. I am supposed to work for my food. Tom knelt down and carefully took the broom from her small hands. Lucy, you don't have to work here. You're a little girl. Little girls are supposed to play and learn and have fun. Lucy looked at him with confusion. But if I don't work, you'll send me back. The matter-of-fact way she said it broke Tom's heart. Lucy, I will never send you back. This is your home now, and you don't have to earn your place here. You belong here just because you're you. Lucy stared at him for a long moment, clearly struggling to understand this concept. Finally, she nodded, but Tom could see that she didn't really believe him. Tom realized that gaining Lucy's trust was going to take time and patience. He began making small changes to help her understand that she was safe and valued. He started involving her in simple age-appropriate activities that were fun rather than work. He showed her how to help him cook by stirring ingredients or setting the table, emphasizing that this was helping, not working, and that it was optional. He also began reading to her every night before bed. Tom had never been much of a reader, but he had driven to town and bought a collection of children's books. Lucy listened to the stories with intense concentration, as if she was trying to memorize every word. "Do you like stories, Lucy?" Tom asked, one evening after finishing a book about a little rabbit. "Yes," she whispered. "I never heard stories before, never." Lucy shook her head. Uncle Dale said stories were a waste of time. Tom felt another surge of anger toward Dale Henderson, but he pushed it down. "Well, we'll read lots of stories. Would you like that?" Lucy nodded, and Tom thought he saw the faintest hint of a smile. Gradually, very gradually, Lucy began to show signs of relaxation. She started eating with more enthusiasm, especially when Tom made pancakes or grilled cheese sandwiches. She began to explore the cabin more freely, touching Tom's books and tools with curious fingers. Most importantly, she started to speak more, asking simple questions about the forest and the animals that lived there. One morning, about 2 weeks after Lucy's arrival, Tom was surprised to find her standing at the kitchen window, watching a family of deer grazing in the clearing behind the cabin. "They're pretty," she said softly. "Yes, they are," Tom agreed, joining her at the window. "Do you like animals?" "I think so. I never saw deer before." "There are lots of animals in the forest. Would you like to learn about them?" Lucy nodded eagerly, showing more enthusiasm than Tom had seen from her since her arrival. That afternoon, Tom took Lucy on her first walk through the forest. He had been hesitant to take her outside, worried that she might try to run away or that the isolation might frighten her. But Lucy seemed enchanted by the woods, asking questions about the trees, the birds, and the tracks they found in the mud. "This is a squirrel track," Tom explained, pointing to small prints near a fallen log. "See how tiny the paws are?" Lucy knelt down to examine the tracks more closely. "Where did the squirrel go?" "Probably up in the trees. Squirrels are very good climbers." As if on cue, a squirrel chattered at them from a nearby pine tree, and Lucy looked up with wonder. "He's talking to us," she said with amazement. "I think he's saying hello," Tom replied, and was rewarded with what might have been Lucy's first real smile that evening. As Tom was preparing dinner, Lucy approached him with a question that caught him off guard. "Tom, are you my daddy now?" Tom paused in his cooking, considering how to answer. "Well, Lucy, I'm taking care of you like a daddy would. Would you like me to be your daddy?" Lucy thought about this seriously. "I don't remember my real daddy. Uncle Dale said he was no good. I'm sure your real daddy loved you very much," Tom said carefully. "But if you want, I can be your daddy now. Would you like that?" Lucy nodded solemnly. "Can I call you daddy?" Tom felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I would be honored if you called me daddy." "Daddy," Lucy said experimentally, as if testing how the word felt. "Daddy, Tom. Just daddy is fine," Tom said with a smile. That night, as Tom tucked Lucy into bed, she looked up at him with those dark eyes that were beginning to show more life. "Daddy, will you always keep me?" "Always, Lucy. You're my daughter now, and nothing will ever change that, even if I'm bad. Lucy, you could never be so bad that I wouldn't want you. You're stuck with me forever." Lucy smiled a real, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. "Good. I want to be stuck with you." As Tom turned off the light and headed to his own room, he reflected on how much his life had changed in just 2 weeks. The quiet, solitary existence he had valued so highly now seemed empty compared to the joy of watching Lucy discovered the world around her. But Tom also knew that their journey was just beginning. Lucy was starting to trust him and open up, but she still carried the scars of her early experiences. There would be setbacks and challenges ahead, and Tom would need to learn how to be not just a caregiver, but a real father to a child who had never known what it meant to be truly loved and protected. The next morning, Tom woke up to find Lucy sitting at the kitchen table, carefully drawing with crayons he had bought for her. When he looked at her picture, he saw a simple drawing of 2 stick figures standing in front of a house surrounded by trees. "Who are these people?" Tom asked. "That's you and me," Lucy said proudly. "That's our house in the forest. It's beautiful, Lucy. Can we put it on the refrigerator?" Lucy nodded enthusiastically, and as Tom taped the drawing to the refrigerator door, he realized that Lucy was beginning to see the cabin as home and him as family. It was a small step, but it was progress. Over the following weeks, Lucy continued to blossom. She laughed for the first time when a chipmunk stole a piece of her sandwich during a picnic. She asked for seconds at dinner without being prompted. She started playing with the toys Tom had bought for her, creating elaborate scenarios with her dolls and stuffed animals. Most importantly, she began to act like a normal 4-year-old, energetic and occasionally mischievous. When Tom found her trying to give her teddy bear a bath in the kitchen sink, he didn't scold her. Instead, he helped her set up a proper bath for the toy, and they spent an hour playing with bubbles and washcloths. "Daddy," Lucy said, as they dried off the soggy teddy bear, "I like living here. I like having you here," Tom replied. You make everything better. Really, really. Before you came, this house was just a place where I slept and ate. Now it's a home because you're in it. Lucy hugged her damp teddy bear and smiled. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Lucy. More than you'll ever know. As autumn turned toward winter, Tom began to think about Lucy's future in more practical terms. She would need to start school eventually, which meant dealing with official paperwork and establishing her legal status as his daughter. He would need to formally adopt her, which might involve dealing with social services and possibly even Dale Henderson again. But for now, Tom was content to focus on the daily miracle of watching Lucy transform from a frightened, silent child into a happy, confident little girl. Every smile, every laugh, every daddy was a gift that reminded him that sometimes the most important things in life come when you least expect them. Tom had found Lucy with a price tag, treated like merchandise to be bought and sold. But in giving her a name and a home, he had discovered that she had given him something far more valuable in return: a purpose, a family, and a love deeper than anything he had ever imagined possible. 6 months had passed since Tom brought Lucy home, and the transformation in both their lives was remarkable. The cabin that had once echoed with solitude now rang with the sounds of childhood Lucy's laughter as she played with her toys, her excited chatter about the animals she had seen in the forest, and her voice calling Daddy. When she needed help or simply wanted his attention, Lucy had grown both physically and emotionally during her time with Tom. She had gained weight, her hair had grown longer and shinier, and most importantly, the haunted look in her eyes had been replaced by the natural curiosity and joy of a healthy child. She no longer flinched when Tom moved suddenly, no longer hoarded food in her room, and no longer asked if she was being good enough to stay. Tom, meanwhile, had discovered a capacity for love and patience that he never knew he possessed. His work schedule had naturally adjusted to accommodate Lucy's needs. He worked shorter days and stayed closer to home, finding that he was actually more productive when he had someone to come home to. The local community had gradually accepted Lucy as Tom's daughter, and several neighbors had become unofficial aunties and uncles who doted on the little girl. But as spring approached, Tom knew he could no longer postpone dealing with the legal aspects of Lucy's situation. She needed to be officially adopted, she needed to start school in the fall, and she needed all the protections that came with being a legally recognized member of his family. Tom had been putting off this conversation with Lucy because he wasn't sure how to explain the complexities of adoption to a He was also worried that the legal process might somehow threaten their relationship or bring unwanted attention from authorities, who might question his fitness as a single father. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace reading stories, Lucy looked up at Tom with a serious expression. Daddy, am I really your little girl? Of course you are, Lucy. Why do you ask? Mrs. Patterson at the store said I look just like you, but I know I don't really. I have dark hair and you have light hair. Tom set down the book and pulled Lucy onto his lap. Lucy, there are different ways to be someone's little girl. Some children are born to their parents, and some children are chosen by their parents. You were chosen by me, which makes you just as much my daughter as if you had been born to me. But what about my first parents? The ones who died? Tom had been dreading this conversation, but he knew Lucy deserved honest answers. Your first parents loved you very much, but they died in an accident when you were very little. Then you went to live with your Uncle Dale, but he wasn't a good caretaker for you. And then you found me at the market, and then I found you at the market, and I knew immediately that you belonged with me. Lucy was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Daddy, can we make it official? Like with papers and everything? Tom was surprised by her question. Would you like that? Yes, I want everyone to know that I'm Lucy Brennan and that you're my real daddy. Then that's exactly what we'll do. The next week, Tom drove to the county courthouse to begin the adoption process. He had expected it to be complicated and bureaucratic, but the family court clerk, Mrs. Rodriguez, was surprisingly helpful and understanding. Mr. Brennan, she said after reviewing the guardianship transfer papers from Dale Henderson, I have to ask, how did you come to have custody of Lucy? Tom had prepared for this question, and he answered honestly. Her uncle was trying to sell her at a local market. I couldn't let that happen, so I paid him and took legal guardianship. Mrs. Rodriguez's expression darkened. He was selling a child. Yes, I have witnesses if needed. Mr. Brennan, what Dale Henderson did was not only morally reprehensible, it was illegal. Guardianship papers don't give someone the right to sell a child. The fact that you intervened probably saved Lucy from a much worse situation, so the adoption will be straightforward. Given the circumstances, yes, we'll need a home study, background checks, and Lucy will need to be interviewed by a social worker. But I don't anticipate any problems. You've clearly provided Lucy with a loving, stable home. The home study took place 2 weeks later. Social worker Janet Mills spent an entire day at the cabin, observing Tom and Lucy's interactions, reviewing Lucy's medical records, and assessing the living situation. Lucy, Janet asked during their private interview, do you like living here with Tom? I love living here, Lucy replied enthusiastically. Daddy takes care of me and reads me stories and teaches me about animals. He never yells at me or makes me work. What do you mean, makes you work? Before, I had to clean and cook and do grown-up things. But Daddy says little girls should play and learn, not work. And how do you feel about Tom adopting you officially? I want him to be my real daddy forever and ever. He's the best daddy in the whole world. Janet also interviewed Tom extensively about his motivations for adopting Lucy, his understanding of the responsibilities involved, and his plans for her future. Tom, Janet said, I have to ask her, a single man with no previous experience with children, what made you decide to take on this responsibility? When I saw Lucy at that market, with a price tag like she was a piece of property, I couldn't walk away. No child should be treated like that. And once I brought her home, I realized that she needed me, but I needed her too. She's made my life complete in a way I never expected. And you understand that adoption is permanent, that you're committing to raising Lucy through all the challenges of childhood and adolescence. I understand completely. Lucy is already my daughter in every way that matters. The adoption will just make it official. 3 weeks later, Janet submitted her report recommending approval of the adoption. The final hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning in June, and Tom was nervous despite Janet's assurances that it was just a formality. Daddy, why are you worried? Lucy asked as they drove to the courthouse. She was wearing a new dress that Tom had bought specially for the occasion, and she was excited about the important day. I'm not really worried, Tom said. I just want everything to go perfectly. It will, Lucy said confidently. The judge will see that we belong together. The courtroom was smaller and less intimidating than Tom had expected. Judge Patricia Hawkins was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who immediately put both Tom and Lucy at ease. Good morning, Judge, Hawkins said. This is a very special day. Lucy, do you know why we're here? Yes, Lucy said clearly. We're here so Daddy can officially adopt me, and I can officially be Lucy Brennan. And is that what you want? Yes, Your Honor. I want Tom to be my daddy forever. Tom, Judge Hawkins said, do you understand the responsibilities you're taking on by adopting Lucy? Yes, Your Honor. I promise to love her, protect her, provide for her, and give her every opportunity to grow up happy and healthy. Lucy, the judge said, after today, Tom will be your legal father, and you'll be his legal daughter. That means you'll be a family forever. How does that make you feel? Happy, Lucy said with a huge smile. Really, really happy. Judge Hawkins smiled and picked up her gavel. Then by the power vested in me by the state, I hereby grant the petition for adoption. Thomas Brennan, you are now Lucy's legal father. Lucy Henderson, you are now Lucy Brennan. Congratulations to both of you. As the gavel came down, Lucy cheered and threw her arms around Tom's neck. We did it, Daddy. We're officially a family. Tom felt tears streaming down his face as he hugged his daughter, his legal official forever daughter. Yes, we did it, Lucy. We're a family. After the ceremony, Tom and Lucy celebrated with lunch at Lucy's favorite restaurant and a trip to the toy store where Lucy picked out a special doll to commemorate the day. That evening, as Tom tucked Lucy into bed, she looked up at him with those dark eyes that now sparkled with happiness and security. Daddy, tell me the story again. Which story? The story about how you found me and brought me home. Tom smiled. It had become Lucy's favorite bedtime story, and she never tired of hearing it. Once upon a time, Tom began, there was a lumberjack who lived alone in the forest. He thought he was happy by himself, but he didn't know that something was missing from his life. Then one day, he went to the market and found the most precious thing in the world, a little girl who needed a home and a family. And what did the lumberjack do? He brought the little girl home and gave her a name and a family and all the love in his heart, and they lived happily ever after. The end. No, Lucy, this isn't the end. This is just the beginning of our story. As Lucy drifted off to sleep, Tom reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. He had found Lucy with a price tag, being sold like property by a man who saw her as a burden. But in giving her a name, a home, and a family, Tom had discovered that Lucy had given him something infinitely more valuable in return. She had given him purpose, joy, and a love deeper than anything he had ever imagined. She had transformed his house into a home, his solitude into companionship, and his existence into a life worth living. Tom Brennan had gone to the market that day looking for supplies. Instead, he had found his daughter, his family, and his future. And as he watched Lucy sleep peacefully in her own bed, in her own room, in their own home, he knew that some of the most important things in life can't be bought or sold. They can only be given freely, with love. Lucy was no longer a child with a price tag. She was Lucy Brennan, beloved daughter, and she would never again be anything other than priceless. The end.